If you're looking for a new job, or maybe you just want to upgrade your current position, it can seem like an overwhelming or daunting task. You know what it is? You're going to need a new resume, or at least a polished resume. So, what should go on there? What shouldn't go on there? How far back do I go? What's working now, but didn't work before? How do I figure all this stuff out? Haha. All of those questions will be answered on today's episode of The Interview, presented by New Horizons Computer Learning Center and sponsored by Forward Careers. I'm your host, Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. This show is a one-on-one interview and it's a Q&A. So we definitely want you to jump into the comments section of whatever platform you're watching on. And if you have questions for the person that we're interviewing today, let us know and we will work it into the conversation. So if you're serious about getting a new gig, don't forget about the thousands of training courses offered by New Horizons of Wisconsin. They can help you up-level your skills from an intro to computers to that you can take right on your mobile device to Windows training and immersive technology courses to prep you in the growing fields of cloud computing and cybersecurity and more. New Horizons is making computer training simple and fun so you can get a better job and have a brighter future. Learn more about them at newhorizonswi.com. That's newhorizonswi.com. The show is also sponsored by Forward Careers. They're a team of workforce professionals that specialize in providing career planning, skills and training, and supportive services to assist individuals aged 14 and up that are unemployed or underemployed. Not only will you find out what jobs are in demand, a Forward Careers representative will work closely with you to define your career goals and help you find or prepare for the job you want. They know the job market and they've built relationships with many of the region's businesses across all industries. Get started with them today at forwardcareers.com. One more thing I want you to be aware of before we get started. If you want to stay in touch with the show, don't miss an episode, sign up with us on the link that's on your screen. When you do that, the folks behind the scenes will make sure that you get an email notification before we go live so you know what career improvement episode and topic we're going to do each month. We do these shows on the first Tuesday of the month, and today we're talking about resumes. Last month, we talked about interviewing skills. Next month, we're going to go one-on-one with an HR professional and ask what's really going on behind the scenes so we can get into the head of an HR pro to try and give you a leg up when it comes to getting a job that you want. So go to that link that's on the screen, sign up, and it says and win because we're giving away some fun prizes every month to that email list as well. So on today's show, we're going to talk about getting your resume ready for prime time because no matter what you're doing, you got to have a resume and there are so many questions that need to be answered. So we're turning to someone that I know knows her stuff, Barb Walla, an executive coach. You can find out more about Barb at barbwallacoaching.com. Barb, it's great to see you again. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How's Tuesday for you so far?
So far, so good. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So resumes, we all seem to get stuck on resumes. But before we ask specific questions about resumes, are resumes still a thing? Like we still need to have one, right?
Yes, you still need one. So I know people think I'm on LinkedIn. So what do I need the resume for? Everyone likes to see the resume. We love LinkedIn, but we like to see the resume.
It's just one of those things that is a tradition, or is it really useful to the hiring manager? Which is it?
It's useful to the hiring manager. I am a consultant, so I help place people, and I will tell you the majority of people that I help, they're not on LinkedIn. I know that's shocking, but they don't want to see that print off from LinkedIn. They want to see the old-fashioned resume. So.
Now, I think I would not have been surprised had you said a lot of the applicants may be applying for their first time job or they're trying to move up in their career, that they're not LinkedIn engaged. But you're saying the hiring managers are not on LinkedIn. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So right now I'm working with 3 companies and one of them is on LinkedIn.
That's surprising to me because you would think that if your job was to hire and find smart people, that you would be all over LinkedIn 24/7. Is it surprising to you that they're not using LinkedIn more often?
Well, this is the owners of the company. So I guess I'm not surprised, maybe because I know them personally. It doesn't surprise me at all. But it's one of those mentality things. They're like, if you would pay me hourly what I'm worth, I'm not going to look at LinkedIn,
Yeah.
so
I
they
guess
want a
that's
resume.
true.
Yeah.
All right. So your job then is to help hiring managers and company owners find great people. I just want to make sure everyone in the audience knows what you do for a living.
Actually, it's twofold. So I do work consulting and help, but I also coach people when they're in job transition, graduating from college, whatever it is, to help them secure their new first job. I work with moms who have been home for a few years or 10 years or 15 years and they want to start a new business, whatever it is, whatever career transition looks like.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
So
I
you
help
know
with
your
that.
stuff. You've worked on both sides of the equation here. So let's get down to business and talk about
Yes.
resumes, because resumes are mysterious to some. And if it's the first time you've ever had to do one, or you know that yours is lousy, it can feel overwhelming. So what are you trying to get done with a resume? I make a resume, I give it to you, you're the hiring manager. What am I trying to say on that piece of paper?
The biggest thing is your resume is what gets you in the door. So I know it's daunting to people who don't have one, and I hate to put more pressure on you that you need to have one, but you do need to have a good resume, especially now because of the applicant tracking systems that people use. You have to have the keywords in there, and that's not a myth. You really do have to have keywords. I fortunately and unfortunately, I don't have a tracking system, so I read every resume. So I can really tell you what I like to see and what I don't like to see.
All right, so that's going to be important because I want to ask about the tracking systems, but I do want to make sure that we're writing a resume that's appealing to the hiring manager themselves. So let's
Mhm.
go step by step. What needs to go on there? So if I'm building a resume from scratch, what must be on there?
So I want to see your name, an email, and a phone number. I don't want to see an address because if you're, say you live in Illinois, or that's where your home base is, but you went to college in Minnesota, but you're applying for a position in Wisconsin. I don't, where do you want to live? I don't get the opportunity to ask you those things. So don't have your address on there. There's no need for it. The other big thing about that is please have an email that is not your college email. I don't want to see the edu. Take the
Mhm.
time to make an email. I also don't want to see the email that you use with your friends and your nickname is in there. Um, let's just be a little professional. And if
Yeah.
you want to make an email that, and literally all it is for is your job hunting, do that. Um, I tell, I work with young women and they'll have gotten married, but then the email has their old name. Change that. Get a new email, just so everything's consistent. We like consistency.
But it could be just a Gmail or some other service. It doesn't have to
Oh,
be a personal domain, right?
no, of course. Yep, just a Gmail.
Okay. That's great. And that's a really good tip about not putting our address on there, especially for folks that are coming out of college that may have a temporary address or might be applying for things out of state or out of their current region. But that's why I think this conversation is so important, because if you talk to anyone for the past umpteen years, we got to have your address on there because that's
Mm.
just what you do. So to that point, how frequently are the requirements for a resume changing? Are they still really consistent, or do they change relatively frequently about what's in vogue to put on a resume?
I'm going to tell you what's consistent is to have obviously your name and a way for us to reach you. That's always been consistent.
True.
The address, because to be honest, people's phone numbers, it used to be like I could look at an area code and I knew where you lived. Well, it's not like that anymore because people have cell phones, so they might get it in one state and move to another state. They've lived in that state for 15 years and they still have that other area code. So I would say I haven't looked at somebody's address for at least 10 years. It just doesn't have
Yeah.
any bearing. So I want to see that. I like a clean outline. I don't want sentences, statements, bullet points. Give me bullet points of what you did, what your title was. And then the most important thing is chronologically, I want to see what you're doing now and then what you did before. When I get a resume that starts with what you did when you graduated high school, and then it goes down from there, I already don't want to read the rest of it because it's like, I want to know what you're doing first and
Yeah.
then go that way chronologically.
Well,
So
for
that's
some of
very
us,
important.
if we started with high school, it would roll like down the steps like a scroll. It would be rather
We're
rather
not
long.
we're not talking about that today.
Yeah. So we're talking a clean resume, not a big
Yes.
narrative, not several paragraphs about your views on life and how you want to save the whales. You want to be able to look at and understand, why are you good and what have you done? You're talking like, I saved this company $500,000 on a project, like those kinds of statements.
And really descriptive of what you do. So if you see a job description and you read it and you're like, oh, those I do those things, make sure that's reflected on your resume. So if you had an internship and now you're applying for a financial position like what you had for your internship, make sure those things are listed, what you did for the financial advisor, those types of things. The other thing that I want to make sure people know is don't use acronyms, um, like because they're very, very specific to your position. And if you're not applying for that same position, I have no idea what those mean for that particular job.
So the interview presented by New Horizons and sponsored by Forward Careers is a conversation between an expert. Today we're talking with Barb Walla and you. If you have questions about how to make a great resume, drop it in the chat. We'll include you in the conversation. And Barb is helping us look at our resume construction to help us get a better job. So I want to ask you a question. You've talked a little bit about what should go on there, what shouldn't go on there. But if I hand you my resume, bink, and we did the eye tracking, what do you look at first? Like, how do you read a resume from top to bottom?
I don't read the objective statement. I'm sorry to tell people that. I don't read that. I read what you've been doing, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. I check your dates on the side. And I know that these days people will stay at a position for 6 months, 18 months, and they flip. I have not met anyone that I've recruited for, no matter if they're 30 or 40 or someone who I still do work for that's in his 70s. They don't want to see you hop around. So I always look at the dates. I also look at the dates to see where the gaps are. So if there's a big gap, if I think it can be explained, I'll bring you in. If I'm not sure, like if it's just too big of a gap, you might be eliminated right away.
Yeah. Let's talk about styles. We've got a question from the audience. Wendy wants to know, resumes can be in many formats. You mentioned a clean resume. Is that the format that you're looking for? And can you describe what we might describe that as so we know what to do and what not to do?
Yep. So clean, I don't want to see, I've gotten resumes before where they have colored squares and they'll have the education in one square, your experience in one square, and then volunteer in a square. They use these different, it's too busy. So I appreciate the ones that have the side that'll have some like kind of references. I really enjoy those, that they already have references from people, like just little statements about the person, but then the majority of their resume is still in that outline form with the bullet points.
Sure.
So unless you're going for a graphic design position where you want to showcase, but then I would tell you to attach something to your email when you send it that shows that piece.
Yeah.
So
good tip. So we're looking for questions. If you have any, put them in the chat. We'll include them. Brian wants to know, and you covered this already about the objective statement, but let's also talk about some of those basic things that people seem to do. So is having an objective statement still something we should include? And you touched on that a little bit, but let's also talk about other things that people do that they don't need to do anymore. Like you mentioned, the address. Are there other things that you see that people need to stop doing right away?
Well, they need to stop the big paragraphs, because I personally, I'm never going to read all that. So I'm assuming other recruiters. I mean, I was an HR manager and I've looked at resumes for 20 plus years. So the objective statement, I'm going to tell you where that should be on your resume, and it is essential. I just don't read it. Where it's essential, though, is for the applicant tracking system. So if you have your objective statement, whatever it is, that's the easiest thing for you to constantly change, because it's just, a few sentences. So when you see a good job post that you want to apply for, change that objective statement to have some of those keywords in it so that it pulls out your resume. that's what your statement is for.
And
So,
that takes me to my next question, I think, which is the difference between the keyword-rich applications you may do online and a printed version that you give to an HR manager or a recruiter. Are
mhm.
those different documents? Like if I'm applying for something on the website, should I be putting in those keyword-rich descriptions to make sure I get flagged?
Yes, you need to have those in there. I don't use any of that software, but most large companies use that software.
Mhm.
And your resume is never going to be seen, unfortunately. So you have to have those words in there.
So we're having maybe one that we use for online and then one that we're using in person. Those are a little bit easier to read and not so, I don't want to say spammy, but so keyword rich into cloud computing, assistant cloud computing expert. You know, if you're going after a cloud computing position, you'd want to make sure that that gets in the
Right.
digital version.
I hate for people to have two resumes, to be perfectly honest. So I was just working with a gentleman who felt like he needed to have two. And I said, let's just try you having the one and changing that objective statement and just putting the keywords in there. And it was still getting pulled just from having the keywords in the objective statement. Doesn't matter where it is on the resume, it just needs to be in there.
Okay. Let's stay on some do's and don'ts for a second. How far
Okay.
do we go back? So someone like me, I mean, while I might look like I'm in my mid 40s, I'm actually 28 again.
Ooh.
But how far back should we go? Because there was a time when it felt like your resume had to be like your work history
Mhm.
verbatim. So you had to talk about your first job flipping burgers. But how far back do you recommend that we go?
So I'll start with a new college grad. Um, Obviously, whatever you're currently doing, any internships, um, don't put down your high school position. But if you have any volunteer or leadership activities that you're doing, even if they're in college, for example, captain of the golf team or something like that, that shows leadership skills.
Mhm.
So include that on there. If you're someone like you who's 28 again, I um, I really, and I know people can't do this when they get older, but if you can stick to one, maybe 2 pages on your resume, so that'll quickly have those things fall off. And the thing is, your experience is going to grow, so you don't need to have those volunteer things
Mhm.
in there. So those can kind of fall away. Any extracurricular, obviously, that can fall away as well. Now, the volunteer thing, if you're applying for a position with a nonprofit, obviously you're going to want to have something on there, but that could also be in your cover letter. So,
Now, that's a good point, how cover letters and resumes may play together because it
mhm,
might not be appropriate to say, I'm a big volunteer for JDRF on your resume, but it may develop your character inside the story. Is that what the cover letter is for? Is to try and position yourself as like to tell the story about you and your career, and then the resume is more fact based?
correct. That's exactly, yep. The cover letter is your story. And the, I know that's hard. The shorter, the better.
Yeah.
Because if your cover letter and resume get to someone, they they want to be able to read it in a certain amount of time. So yeah, shorter the better.
Every hiring manager seems to have triggers. When
Hmm.
they do this, it triggers me immediately to the no pile. Can you share some of the things that you flag immediately that makes you go, they're not paying attention, they're not a good candidate, there's no way I'm interviewing them?
I'm going to tell you the biggest thing is the positions that I recruit for will be on ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, whatever, but they're also always posted on the website so people can apply that way. So then you get an email to the HR email. And if it says Dear Sirs, that's a trigger for me. Um, because, um,
Hello.
yeah, well, and how presumptuous to think that only men are going to read this email.
Of
So
course.
unfortunately, that's a trigger. So I would put Dear Hiring Manager or just put Human Resources,
Mhm.
whatever the email says, because the email says hiring. Put that. Obviously, if you can go on their website and see the name of the person, that would be even better.
Yeah.
But yeah, the SIRS thing. So that's for the email. For the resume, spell check. So one would think because it's usually a Word document or a Google Doc that will catch the spelling, but it doesn't always. So have somebody look over your resume a few times, spelling, and I'm going to say grammar errors, because if you're not capitalizing certain things, like the name of your company that you worked at prior and all those things, I just automatically, it just shows that you took the time. And people have to remember, resumes, interviewing, all the things. You're not just interviewing for that position. Every single thing that you're doing, I'm scrutinizing as a hiring manager. So does your resume look good? You took time on that. Are you responsive to my emails when I'm emailing you or calling you? Good. Then I know that you're interested in this and that you're going to be a good employee.
I don't know how else to ask this question other than just to say it. So I'm just going to say it. I hope that's okay.
Oh, please.
So you can tell when someone's faking it, right?
Oh, yeah.
How do you know that when they're faking it, when they're applying for a job they have no chance to get or have no business applying on? What are the tells that gives away someone that's faking it? Not lying, but just faking it, kind of stretching their experience a little bit.
Well, I'll have people who apply for technical positions and they've never done anything technical on their resume. And this is hard, really hard right now, because I'm not specifically a firm believer that you have to have a 4-year college degree, but when the position is posted that you have to have a 4-year college degree in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering, whatever it is, don't apply for a position and tell me you have a certification in whatever it is. And then you can see that they've changed the verbiage on their resume, because I always go to their LinkedIn to see if they match.
Okay, so that's
a good way for me to see if they're telling the truth.
No, that's really good. And a lot of the folks that are watching this show are the folks that work with New Horizons to get certification and improve their skills so they can go get a job. So update your resume once you get your certification, update your LinkedIn as well, for sure. But you bring up a good point. Here's my resume, but your investigation for someone doesn't stop there. So if I'm an applicant and maybe I pass the resume, what else are you doing to check up on me? And what else do we need to be mindful? Because it's not just the resume we put in front of you.
Yeah. So I always go on LinkedIn to see if that matches what's on the resume. And I also check all your social media, whatever I can find. And I Google you. So that's just, and I do that prior to an interview.
So prior to the interview, you're going to Google me and see like my college fraternity photos and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, because that's no joke, right? If you're all over your Facebook and your Twitter with a bunch of inappropriate stuff, that reflects on you. You got to go through and clean that stuff up, right?
You really, really do. And I've probably hammered that to my children so much that neither one of them use social media much.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that's the only advantage of being 28 yet looking mid-40s, that social media didn't exist when I was in college, because there's a lot of stuff that I would not want out in the world. Thank the Lord. We've got a great question here from Steve. I can list out things that I do, but what's the best way to use the best language and choose the most professional wording? So I did this stuff, but how do I say it the right way? What do you recommend? Great question, Steve.
That is an absolute, I love that question. And I'm going to tell you, you don't have to be that original. You can go to a job description and see how they list it on the job description. And if that is pretty much what you've done, you can put that on your resume. And I don't mean the job that you're applying for. I mean, for always. You're like, I have done all these things. Google can be your best friend when you're writing your resume, besides obviously having somebody read it for you. And just use those words so that you can get the professional words and make it look more professional if you can't think of it yourself, And ironically, once you start putting it in there, it'll come to you. Yeah.
Good question. Thank you,
Steve.
Steve.
Good question.
So I just can't get past the idea of how important really is a resume. Like, if we're completely befuddled here, is it worth an investment to have someone write it for us? Is it really that important?
It is that important. I'm going to tell you the easiest way to write a resume if you can't afford to have someone help you with it. LinkedIn is actually the best template. So if you go into LinkedIn and you update with your dates and everything like that, you can actually copy that and move it over to a Word doc or Google Doc, whatever you want to use, and then tweak the resume from there, because you can put more things on there. But it is actually the easiest way to do it. If you have nothing, start with LinkedIn, because they have you put your experience on there and, list it in chronological order. Very easy to do it that way. Was there another question to that? Did I miss it?
No, I think you nailed it. We were talking about
Yeah.
how to say what you wanted to say and where to find the right professional language to say it.
Yep. And you can also go like to Glassdoor and put a position in, the position that you have done, and job descriptions will pop up, and you can take some of those words and put it into your resume. So to be honest, the way that I start helping people write their resumes is we go to LinkedIn first and make their LinkedIn look a certain way, and then we move it over to a Word doc, and then we work off that. So
That's great. So let's talk about touting our accomplishments. It can feel a little braggy to talk about the things we've done, but those are the types of things that people hold on to when they're comparing candidates. Isn't that important?
it's so important. And so this is what I do. I tell candidates to think about the things, the 5 things that people say about you the most. Adjectives, you're humble, you're loyal, you're a good worker, all those things. So it's one of the questions I ask in an interview, describe yourself. And then I ask them, what's something that you're working on? And that's because I don't do the strength and weakness thing. But if your interviewer does those, you have the opportunity to say those things. But if they never ask you that question and the interviewer is asking you certain things, go back to that in your head. How would my friend describe me? How would my peer describe me? And if it's easier for you than to talk, say those things about yourself, just pretend you're the friend that's talking about yourself. You have to sell yourself. And I think that's the hardest thing for people. I'm selling the position and I'm selling the company, and you're selling yourself, and it has to work together. We have to make sure you're a good fit, but you also have to make sure we're a good fit. So, yeah.
And what are some of those things that stand out? Because I remember when I hired people in the past, it was no, Sally, the one that did the software installation from scratch, like the person that had that little memory trigger
Mhm.
inside their resume that they put forward in the interview or inside their resume. What are some of the things that you look for as far as accomplishments? It doesn't just have to be a degree or monetary. What are some other things that stand out?
Um, if someone does a project, um, and you can put that on your resume, how you've done the project and finished it to completion, those are huge. Also, going back to the younger candidates who would have the places that they volunteer, it says a lot about a person, what means something to you to spend your extra time somewhere. So that'll actually, as far as just not actually talking to the person, just like looking at a resume to make you stand out from someone else. How long you stay at a position. I had a candidate who started at a golf course when he was 13. 10 years later, that young man, through schooling and everything, he is still working at that golf course part-time. So those things stand out on a resume. Yeah.
So this is going to make me look like I'm 28, old. But I do have to ask, are references still a thing? And what's the policy and practice of getting references on the resume, if they're even still a thing?
Don't put them on a resume. Don't put them on a resume, and don't put on their references will be provided when requested. Of course,
Just don't put them on at all. Just forget, nuke the whole resume thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you don't need, I still use references though. Let me be very clear. I use references, but don't put them on the resume. What might panic some people is that I generally don't call the references that you are willing to give me. I want to,
Oh,
yeah. Why would I want to call
oh.
those people? Those are the people are going to say good things about you, right? So I am going to want to talk to a former manager, peers, If you're leaving a position and you don't want anyone to know, which is totally understandable, but someone that you worked with has already left and they know that you're leaving and you trust them, I want to talk to them. People that if you've had a management position, I want to talk to people who you managed, those are the people I want to talk to for references, because I learn a lot more about you.
That's sneaky. I don't know if I
And
like that, Barb.
you know what?
That's sneaky what you're doing there.
The other thing is I find out things that you've told me during interview. I check with the references.
Yeah. So Sally did that software installation all by herself. How did it go? That's not exactly it. Like, those are the types of things you find out.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
So just be honest. It's, we always say honesty is the best policy. It truly is.
Sure.
Because we can find stuff out.
All right. Rapid fire questions here.
Yes.
How big is font and overall easy to read presentation? Because some people get crazy with their fonts. They have big font, small font. Like, does it look like a boring thing we just typed, or how much flair goes into the overall presentation?
I do want your name bigger and maybe bold the email and everything. And then I want the name of the company and the dates, those bolded, because honestly, I'll just look down and see where you were and how long you were there. So those bolded. Stick with the same font on all of it. If you script here and you got some other thing going, some handwriting thing going on there and all over, it's too much. Just it's a piece of business. So
Right.
Just make it look extremely professional.
Pictures on a resume. Some people do that. What do you think?
Don't like it.
So, like, my smiling face wouldn't help me get a job, Barb? Is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Believe me,
Well,
I'm
and
used to it.
here's the thing. I look at your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And make sure you always have a picture on LinkedIn, which I know you talked with Sue, and I'm sure Sue told everyone to make sure you have your picture on there. Yeah. So I see it there, but yeah, I don't need it on your resume.
Yeah, it's not something that we're going to hammer on right here, but being married to a photographer, I'm legally obligated to say, make sure it's a professional headshot, not one of these, because people can tell and it makes you look like a complete amateur. So bite the bullet and get a real headshot, because it will make you look a lot better. Let's go through the anatomy of a resume real quick, because if other folks have questions, put them in the chat. And we have one about the length of the resume we'll get to in just a second. But if you have a question, put it in the chat, because we still have a few more minutes here with Barb Walla as we talk about the do's and don'ts of creating a resume to help you get your next great job. Let's go through the resume top to bottom real fast. You just did some of it. Name, contact information, jobs and dates are bolded. What other sections would you say are the Barb Walla commandments of resume?
So you want to have that objective on there. I don't read it personally, but that's where you put all the words in so that the ATSs can kick it out. And then your experience, and then your education. Now, I have a lot of people who put their education on the top. It's okay. I just prefer to see it on the bottom. And if you have room, the very best thing to do is have the company that you worked for, and then say what the company is. And I know a lot of people miss that. Boy, that's huge. So, because there'll be like electronic companies or companies that have a name, like Country Manufacturing. I have no idea what they make, but if you can put a little thing, what they make, it just helps. It helps with that. So I want to see those, and it's really simple. Just put a line in between each one. It does not have to be anything fancy. And for the education experience, those things, if you can type them in caps and bold, but that is really the only caps I want to see, because otherwise it looks like you're yelling at me, and I don't want to read your resume if you're yelling at me. So.
Hire me.
Right?
Yes. I'm really good.
I have had people change their emails to that. It'll be like their first name, hire me at gmail.com.
Clever.
Yeah.
And how do you take it?
No,
not clever. No, don't have fun. Is that what you're saying? No fun.
And the thing is, I love to have fun when I'm talking to you, because the easier that I can make you feel with a story of my life, or tell you a joke or whatever it is, or you're going to tell me more. You're going to tell me more things, but not on a resume.
We're going to give you more
So-
information you're going to use against us, Barb. I'm telling
Correct.
you. Man, you're sneaky. All right. There's a lot of debate around this.
Mhm.
GPA. Do you put it
Yes.
down?
You're not going to like this either. You don't need to put it down, but I ask for official transcripts.
Really? Like, go
Mhm.
call your college or high school and get the official transcript? You don't demand it, but you request it?
If you want to get hired for some of the positions that I have to have an official transcript, and not one that was sent to you and then sent to me. You can go online and order. Most colleges order a PDF and they email it to me.
Sure.
And I need an official transcript. And I'm going to tell you stories of. I'm not going to tell you stories.
Tell the stories. Come on.
Okay. Well, I was a corporate recruiter, and I just left there a year and a half ago. And I had companies that I hired for all throughout the United States. So California was one of the companies. I actually had someone who not only had put down that they had a master's and a bachelor's. So lo and behold, they didn't even graduate high school.
Oh.
And you know what? I'm okay with that. Like, he couldn't have that position.
Yeah.
To be honest. But if he would have been honest, we would have helped him because we had an education thing. He was such a nice person. Could have gotten a GED and he could have worked his way up. We actually would have helped him get his bachelor's, but it automatically disqualified him. And it was all because I asked for transcripts. Because people lie. We had the general manager that worked there actually had framed transcripts of someone who made them. Because, you can make a transcript.
Like, just made it, like Photoshop their own transcript?
Correct.
Did they give themselves a 4.0? I want to know.
No, they didn't. Maybe they thought that was stretching it too far. But the thing was that GM, this was probably 10 years ago, he called the college. He just did. There was something about the transcript. He just didn't. So he called the college and they were like, that person never went here.
Wow.
So I asked for transcripts.
Let's talk about that for a second, though, because some folks that are watching the show completed high school or got a GED, but they didn't go on to college, but they're getting technical training from New Horizons or Forward Careers. And that looks good on someone, right? When like, okay, they didn't go to college, but they've gotten this certification and this certification. As a recruiter, are you seeing that as someone that is doubling down and investing in their future? Is that building on their status? Is that looked on favorably?
Oh, definitely. Anytime you're doing anything to improve yourself, and there's always a story. So, and I have in-laws that didn't graduate from high school and then they went on to get their GED and then they've gone on to do other technical things, and it's fantastic. And I have never seen an actual resume of theirs, but to see that you're doing something to improve what you want your work to be. Yeah, that should definitely be on there. And the thing is, when people who are in school, you can put down when the expected date is. So you had mentioned too, when they get the certification, to put that on there. But if they're working on a certification and they're going to have it by April 2021, put that on there.
Okay.
It's important. If you think it's important to be doing it, it's important for you to have it on your resume.
Let me ask a question about emerging careers. If you're going to be an accountant, accounting has been around for bazillions of years. But if it's cybersecurity or blockchain or cloud computing, these emerging technologies, how do you know who knows what they're talking about when you can't reference a decade of experience because it hasn't been around for a decade? So what can you do as an applicant to put yourself at the front of that consideration when time served is not a qualifier?
That is an excellent question.
Well, thank you.
This is what I'm going to defer to. There were so many times as someone who was looking at resumes, I had no idea, especially when it came to tech, what they were talking about. We had Cisco systems and all these things. So I heavily relied on our IT people. So list all of that on your resume because it's going to pop out. That'll go to any applicant tracking system easily. And then as far as someone reviewing it that isn't sure what all of that means, I would hope that they would have someone look at it that would be like, oh yeah, I know what they're talking about. And that experience doesn't matter. The fact that you have something that's new and that's what's being used now, that's what really matters. So
We're almost out of time with Barb. If you have a question, get it in. Barb, we've got a few we want to get on the air here. Brian wants to know. So if your resume is 1 to 2 pages max, what if it is too long? How do you help someone remove some info to condense their experience? How do you squeeze things down so it doesn't go on too long?
yeah, the easiest thing probably to do is, if you have 20 years on there, obviously start just chopping off so you have less years on there. If you can't do that because you feel like the things that you did were so important, I tell people, can you just like in a smaller section, just say other experience with and list the companies. So then that'll, instead of having it all listed out, it'll pop it down even to just be the 2. Like I said before, I would prefer 1 page, but I'm okay with the 2, but don't go beyond 2.
Yeah, and I think you were just touching on something. What about shifting inside the same company? Do you show all the roles and your last role first? Is that how you would
Yes,
list it?
correct. But boy, if you've been at a company for 10 years and you've moved up, that's fantastic. Look
That
on a resume.
that looks good. Someone
Oh
that's
yeah.
ascending in the career. So the perfect person right now is ascending in their career, continuing their education, saving the whales, a nice clean resume, not listing their address. What else are they doing? Come on, this is all good stuff. What else haven't we covered, Barb?
What else are they doing?
Yeah.
They respond when someone emails them.
Ah.
That is a really big thing, which does have to do with your resume. I am going to tell you, job seekers, when you're applying for positions, keep a spreadsheet so that you remember which job you applied for, what the company was, and the date that you sent your resume, so that when someone reaches out to you, if you can't remember, because honestly, my heart goes out to you when you're trying to find a job. It is literally like a full-time job, and you can't always remember. Someone will call you like 2 weeks ago, you applied for this position, and you're like, I did. So keep a spreadsheet. So
Yeah. So let me flip that on its head, Barb. And I just need to speak for all of the job applicants. How come hiring managers are so terrible? How come they never get back to us? How come it just feels so lonely and sad when we're trying to get someone's attention? Because it's really frustrating.
doesn't it? It feels lonely. So here's the thing. If you apply for a position and I don't reach out to you, you're not qualified. Sorry. If I do reach out to you and I have any conversation with you, a phone interview, whatever it is, I personally always email you to tell you where you're at. I'm big on, we did a bunch of things during the week and then I need you to take the next step to meet with somebody else, but I don't have that set up. But on Friday, I'm going to send you an email so you don't think about it all weekend, because I remember what that feels like when you're waiting on that job. So it's just really up to the hiring manager. When I tell people, I'll let you know, and they're like, you will. It's painful to tell somebody we're going to continue with other candidates. We wish you well, but at least they know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not going to get that one. So.
Yeah. And you hinted towards something that I do want to make sure we call out. If you say, that sounds great, call Terry, you're keeping track as to whether or not we called Terry, right? If you give us homework, you want to see if we do it. Those are all recruiter tricks, aren't they?
A good recruiter is paying attention to everything that you ask somebody to do. So, and the other thing is, are you going to thank me for my time? So I just got done helping somebody with a financial, hire somebody for a financial position. And I talked to 8 people. One young man emailed me and thanked me for my time out of those interviews that I did. That was it. You don't have to write notes anymore. I know back in the day, we used to handwrite notes and send them out. We all know I'm not 28. But send an email, just send it. It's so simple. Thank you for your time. Thank you. It does a couple of things. It shows you're appreciative, and it also puts your name back up to the top of my emails.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, did we say thank you for your time yet today, Barb? I meant to say thank you for your time. I don't want to get on your naughty list because it sounds like you're going to check up on me by the time we're
Yeah,
done.
I probably should tell everybody that my oldest brother works for the NSA, and
Oh,
then
that's great. Yeah.
and my second oldest brother was a police chief, but now he has retired from that, and he does all my background checks for me. So, yeah.
Now we see where you get it. We've got one more question from the audience we want to get to here. Lynn wants to know, so what if you work at a company that everybody knows, like Amazon? Do you still try and describe what they do?
No.
All right. So if it's obvious, like, hey, I work at Kohl's.
Very good question, Lynn. Yeah.
Good question, Lynn. Thank you for that. Okay. It's been a fascinating interview. There's so many ways we can go on this. And I'm sorry if it felt like an interrogation at some points, but it can be kind of frustrating if you're trying to get a job and you just can't get
really
that call
can
back.
be.
Tell us how you help people, because you offer an opportunity for people to get some questions answered. Can you share that?
I do. Actually, on my website, I have where you can sign up for a 30-minute, it's free, 30-minute coaching call is what I call it. And you can send me your resume and then we can discuss it if you want to do that. And then if you feel like you want to take it further, I do help people rewrite their resumes, help them with their networking. Also, because I do hiring, I have connections that I can help connect people with, but obviously there is a fee for that. But if anyone wants to do the 30-minute for free, please reach out.
That's a terrific opportunity. So I put your email up on the screen, but what is the website so we can get that in the chat so people can see that?
Yeah, it's Barb Walla Coaching.
Oh, so it's just like coaching.
Correct.
All right. So I'm just going to type that in here real quick because Walla is spelled so amazingly. So Barb Walla Coaching. And I will never, ever mispronounce your name again, because the first time we had the chance to talk, you told me it was like Walla Walla, Washington. So I'll never forget that.
Correct.
Ever. It's a great opportunity, and this has been really great information. This is the spirit of the show. We want to make sure that we hear from the folks that are doing the hiring and the ways that we can get ahead, because there are really smart people out there improving their skills, and then it's time to go audition and be interviewed for these jobs, and it's really tough sometimes. So, Barb Walla, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It was fun. All right. So that's what this show is all about. So if you'd like to improve your chances of landing that great job, make sure to check out newhorizonswi.com. That is the website of New Horizons of Wisconsin, offering thousands of guaranteed to run technology courses from every flavor of tech and personal skills. It's not just technology courses that are out there. These guys will train you on whatever you need to help you land your next terrific opportunity. That website is newhorizonswi.com. We also want to say thank you to our sponsor, which is Forward Careers. Forward Careers has stepped up to help us. So define your goals and get the job you want with Forward Careers. So here's what we have coming up on the next edition of the interview. Like I mentioned, it's the first Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. and we broadcast it live on our YouTube channel, the Facebook page for newhorizonswi.com, and Forward Careers is one of our partners. Next month, March 2nd, 10 a.m. I mean, by then you'll have a job, right? So we won't be talking to you. We'll be talking to other job seekers. But should you be in the audience, we will get one-on-one with Manny Lara, a director of human resources, to understand what they're looking for and how you can stand out in their eyes. So this would be a great opportunity to bring some of these initial topics together. How to do better at interviewing, how to write a resume, how to do your LinkedIn page, and more. So if you're really trying to land that job, you'll want to log in next month, March 2nd, and don't miss the interview presented by New Horizons and Forward Careers. I'm Pat Miller, the Idea Coach. It's great to see you again this month. I wish you a lot of luck on the job search, and we'll see you next month. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.